This is the Alexa from Maker Keyboards. It's a 65% that's designed to offer a lot of flex in your builds, in more ways than one. As far as I could tell, it was first available for public sale sometime in 2021, and fulfillment has been going on for a while. I placed my order in June of 2021, but my board wasn't delivered until just a few weeks ago. As of this video, the Alexa is only available to purchase secondhand, so I guess the real question to ask is it worth it? Let's find out right after you click that like button. It's worth it. First off, this board has a very different value proposition in December of 2022 than it did in June of 2021 when I placed my order. After all, starting in the late half of 2021, we saw amazing 65% at unthinkable prices, like the QK65, the Keychron Q2, the Bakeneko 65, and the Melitrix Zoom 65, among many, many others, and $150 is the new $250. When I unboxed my Alexa, I was shocked at how light it was, and not really in a good way.
This thing is super light.
This board is lighter than a Tofu 60, and unlike the Ellipse that I reviewed recently, the Alexa is a boring metal rectangle, which means machining time can't possibly justify the price. So you might be asking yourself, why even bother making this review? Well, the Alexa has one thing going for it that's unlike any other board on the market near this price point, and that's the ability to run a plateless configuration. Although the kit comes with an FR4 plate, the most highly recommended config apparently is an plateless gasket mount, which along with a 1.2mm PCB should offer an extremely bouncy typing experience if you're into that. Let's take a quick listen where we compare the FR4 plate build to the plateless build. Switches are the Strawberry Milk Ice from Denkeebs, which are a Texi manufactured long pull linear with a full ultra cure nylon housing. Keycaps are GMK Pono. So there are a couple things I want to note about both the board and the switches after trying out the different configurations. First, I wasn't able to replicate the insane flex that I saw in some of the review videos of prototype boards that came out in mid-2021. Even with the gasket mounted plateless build, there was a minimal amount of flex both in regular typing and when pressing as hard as I could on the keyboard. I don't know if that's due to potential changes in the design from the prototype, but I for one was pretty disappointed with the flex, as that was one of the main features that drew me to this board in the first place. Second, it's pretty clear that the plateless build leads to a very different sound signature, and I really enjoyed the sound of the plateless build over the FR4 plate. However, there was a bit of very sporadic rattle that comes through during typing, and I think it's the sound of the daughterboard wire picking up vibrations and rattling against either the PCB or the bottom case, or it's either the leaf spring, more on that later, rattling against the top case. It wasn't as audible as it was feelable? Is that a word? But it was just one of those things that detracted from the overall feel of the board, making it feel just a little bit less premium. Last, this board is advertised as having 3 different mounting configurations: plateless, top mount, leaf spring, and gasket. However, the leaf springs in the PCB don't really seem like they're doing anything, as there's no suspension between the PCB itself and the leaf spring tabs, unlike in the marketing materials on the website. It is possible that they're using a mono-leaf spring inside the FR4, where the middle of the bar is thicker than on the ends, but I'd have to cut into the PCB to find out, so we're just gonna have to take their word for it.
I feel like the leaf spring is kind of a gimmick. I mean, they're there, but they feel like they're adhered to the PCB. I don't know if I would consider this an actual leaf spring. That's like a marketing gimmick.
Consequently, it seems more like a gimmick than an actual feature, so I didn't test it out. As for the gaskets themselves, they have no adhesive, which is supposed to make it easier to switch between different configurations, but a slight adhesive on the gaskets like we saw on the Skepper Ellipse would have been nice. It was a little finicky getting the board put together, but it didn't seriously detract from the build experience. So going back to the ultimate question, is it worth it? I'd say no. Now don't get me wrong, there were quite a few units sold and it seems like most people are pretty happy with it given the lack of selling volume on Mech Market. There aren't too many of them for sale on the Mech Market Discord, but they seem to be going for roughly $200 or so on the aftermarket. It's a decent board with a decent price, decent quality, and a decent sound. If you have been wanting to try a plateless build, the Alexa is a great entry point as most other boards that support plateless builds are higher tier with a corresponding higher price. But at least for the production model, it feels like one of the main benefits to a plateless build is lost in the lack of flex, and unless you spring for an extra solder PCB, you're limited to specific switches unless you want to be playing Legos every time you pick up your board, as certain brands of switches have thinner 4 and 5 pins, which don't do a great job of securing the switches in the board. The bottom line is, the Alexa would have been an insane value if it had shipped a year earlier, but going into 2023, I think you're better off looking elsewhere, like at this video right here. I'm MakerMods, and I'll catch you in the next video.